Hello, everyone. Welcome to Progressive HR Live. Today we have Robert Brown from Olumo on the stream, and we're going to be talking about HX Tech and how it's the modern approach to employee listening. Questions. So, Robert, what is HX Tech, and what's the difference between HX Tech and employee experience technology?
Yeah, we've come a long way over the years, and we've really come from employee satisfaction to employee engagement to, along that progression. Now, what we're really seeing is the need to create a human experience at work, one that values your people and the things that they're really looking for in their lives, in their personal lives. It's an all-encompassing human experience. And that's why we believe that that's where organizations really need to focus right now. And we'll talk a lot about that today, but human experience at work, don't forget that term.
So, Robert, why is human experience tech important for employee listening?
Again, we're coming into a modern age, right? Where the employees and employees within organizations have very different younger generations, new generations have very different expectations of what they are looking for and looking for their lives to be. And they don't expect to just go and do the things like we used to and come into work and work there forever and go home and retire. And it's a completely different experience. And so now what's happening is that employees are shopping organizations, and it's flipped everything up on its head, because now you have to create an environment and an overall experience that people want to be part of. That's the key, is to create an experience that people want to be part of. And so what we've developed here at Lumo and what we'll share with you today is a powerful way to identify exactly where to focus your efforts, what to focus on within your organizations, where those gaps are, because I've always said that you can't fix what you don't understand. And if you don't have a needle, you can't move the needle. So if we don't know where we are within our organizations, then what I hear from people time after time as I work with HR and people leaders is that I just tell me exactly what I need to do. I'll go get it done and we can work on that. But what I'm struggling with is knowing what to do. I feel like I've tried everything and I'm just throwing darts. And that's why we're here to help organizations really get and understand exactly, pinpoint what to do and where to focus their efforts.
Thanks, Robert. And I've heard that has to go a lot with the democratization of decision making within organizations, and how we're really, moving past this that everybody is interested in being an employee, and more into purpose and values and connecting with the organization on a very much deeper level. And so, how does human experience technology work into that democratizing decision making of the organization?
Well, it's really about helping to get a live and listening ear. Again, you can't fix what you don't understand. And as organizations grow, become larger, multiple sites, locations, all kinds of different ethnicities and groups and demographics of all types, well, everyone has different needs. And in the past, we kind of, hey, here's what we do as a company, here it is, take it or leave it. That doesn't work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to be able to identify and customize your organization to create an overall experience, again, that people want to be part of. I say, look, it's not that hard. You just have to create an experience that people want to be part of. The problem with that is that can be hard because there are so many different individual facets to that. And so listening really becomes the key. How do you actually know what's happening at the front lines? I call it leadership fog, where the organization at the highest levels is typically very disconnected through different levels of management to what's really happening at the front lines. Well, if you don't know what's happening, then again, you can't fix what you don't understand. And so that's the key, is you need a technology and a way to engage your people in constant communication. There was this great idea years ago, back in the late, 90s, of let's do this annual engagement survey. And a lot of organizations still take that as kind of like, well, this is what we do because that's what companies do is we do an annual engagement survey. But that checkbox exercise doesn't move the needle. We have to go beyond that. We have to create and understand and listen to how our people are thinking and feeling and what's happening in the organization. And we need that insight today. We need it live. And that's why we've created this whole solution that we're going to be sharing with you today.
We are going to go into a little bit of a presentation that Robert has prepared for us about Olumo and about employee listening and human experience technology. So please bear with us while we switch screens here.
Yeah, we've all heard and talked a lot about this, right? The great resignation, the great reset, reshuffle, whatever you want to call it. My favorite is the great wake up call for organizations. But essentially, we all know where we are. And I don't need to spend time here sharing this because everybody knows and is feeling this 100%. And that's why HR and people leaders are coming to me every single day literally, saying I had a credit union just last week and they're like, man, we feel like we've tried everything. We've tried bonuses. We've tried this. We've done this. We've done this. We're just not sure exactly what to do. Can you help us figure that out? And that's the struggle, right? But again, I share with organizations, it's really simple and don't overcomplicate it. But what you really have to focus on is simply creating a workplace experience that people want to be part of. Now, I know that can be difficult because every organization is driven by people and they create all these things, but everybody's different and their needs are different, like we mentioned. And so we have to create and understand the different needs throughout the organization because it's people. I learned a long time ago that no matter what business you're in the people business. And that's for sure. Doesn't matter if you're selling cars or widgets or software technology. Everybody's in the people business, and people are the key to the success of your organization. But what drives them, and this is really key, is that it's their mindset and beliefs that drive how they think and how they feel. That drives what they do or their behaviors, and their behaviors deliver your results. So if you want lasting change, you have to focus on, you can throw some temporary things that, hey, let's go incentivize this specific behavior, and that can work short term. But if you want something to drive lasting change, you've got to go deeper than that. And you've got to align your people with the organization. And that's where a focus now comes on the core, their mindsets and beliefs. And those come from that human experience at work. My mindset and belief about your organization comes from my daily experiences within your organization. It's my interactions with my leaders, my manager. It's my belief in executive leadership. Do I have learning and development opportunities? Do I have clarity in my role? Do I feel like you're concerned about my well-being? All of those different things, right? There's all of these different aspects, and that's where it can become hard, is how do we know which of those are most important and where to focus our precious time and resources? Well, that's what we do here at Olumo, is we help you to figure out how to attract and retain your people by focusing on creating that human experience at work, a more human experience at work. We created Olumo to deliver the first real-time human sentiment analytics that gives you the actionable intelligence you need to pinpoint where to focus your time and resources. It's that simple. Look, we can do all kinds of different things, but just tell me where to focus and where to get the best results. And that's what we're here to help. So what we did is we created a human experience assessment. This is like no assessment you've ever seen before. And it's not a survey. Yes, we ask questions, but it's not a survey. And I'll show you how we create conversations here in a moment that deliver the real insight. But the first thing we did is we worked with our organizational psychologists and worked with them to say, hey, from a behavioral level, what are the core behaviors and beliefs that people need to have within an organization? And they said there's really 5 core things. And the first is that they have a belief in the products and services that you provide. The second is that they believe enough to recommend, you want the outcome to be that they recommend their friends and family to your organization. That's what helps you to grow and bring in the right type of people. Then they also need to have a belief in your organization so that they're intending to stay with you. Beyond that, they need some type of an emotional connection and to feel inspired by the organization or their team or people in some way. And all of that then should lead them to not want to come in and just do their job, but to actually give of their discretionary effort to help the organization to grow. And that's where that's where a company goes from just creating products and services to becoming amazing, is when they can get a fully engaged group of people working and driving together, aligned to achieve that ultimate outcome. So the first thing we do is we ask questions surrounding these specific areas. We do it on a scale of 1 to 5 using the Likert scale, with a 5 being engaged, 4 passive, and 1, 2s, and 3s being your disengaged, so that you know exactly where you are in the organization. And then you can look at it by team or department, location, anything you want, and figure out, hey, where are our pockets? Where are we doing well? Where are our strengths and where are our weaknesses? But even more important than that is now identifying again, well, now we know where our engagement levels are. Now we need to know why. So that's where we then focus on the drivers of engagement. Those components I mentioned a moment ago. Do I feel like I have meaningful work? And do I have good leaders? My direct leader, do I believe in them and the executive leadership? And do I feel like the company cares about my personal well-being and all these different aspects? And I wanted to share with you, this is actual real data from a company that we completed this assessment on just a couple of weeks ago. And they're a group that works with children that have autism, and they provide in-home services to them. So what the data tells in a story essentially here is that, of course, people come to work for this organization because they want to help those kids. They believe in it. They have a huge belief in it. In fact, between top and mid box, you've got almost 96% of that organization firmly believes in what they do for the people that they're serving, for those children, right? They have great, meaningful work. They have good leaders. They have clarity in their work. But where are they struggling? Well, we don't feel like, frankly, innovation, and that really almost goes back to a listening score, because it's not that we don't feel like there's innovation, the company's doing it, but we don't feel like they listen to us to allow us to help drive innovation. We also are struggling with rewards and recognition, and their well-being scores are pretty much off the chart the other way. And so what you're seeing here is the story that's being told in the data of, here's our strengths, here's the things that we're doing well, but here's the places we're struggling. Now, that's what you get with a lot of competitors type surveys, right? And you're thinking, oh, well, this is kind of, I've seen this type of stuff before. It's great. But what it doesn't tell me is, now, what do you have to know? Well, what's the why behind that? Why am I struggling with well-being, right? And that's where the game changes. What we do at Olumo, and we can do it through email, but we primarily encourage people to deliver this via text, because it's so fast and effective. Not even an app. There's nothing to install, nothing at all. We just literally send them a text and a link, and they open up the link and it start engaging with us. But what we do that's unique is, not only do we ask them to rate their experience, but then we invite them to share with us why. And we engage in live human-to-human conversations. Now, I know in today's era of technology and bots and AI and all those things that you can do, of course, we actually tried it that way, to be honest. We tried it that way. But what we learned is that when people knew they were talking to a bot, that doesn't create engagement. That doesn't create a human experience. That doesn't create a connection. That doesn't help them to feel listened to or heard. That's just a traditional survey. And so we got rid of all of that, and we brought in teams of very effective, highly effective people to engage in conversation, showing empathy and listening and caring about the situations and the things that they're going through. And in these anonymous conversations, as we dive in and listen to them, then we're able to identify exactly why and get the understanding to now hand to you and your organization, pinpointing the why behind the numbers. It's the most amazing thing you've ever seen. It's such a powerful, like I wish you could be in the room when we share the data and the insights with these organizations, because there's certain things that, of course, you already know about your organization and fully expect, and you're like, oh yeah, that totally validates exactly what I was thinking and feeling about the organization. And
Robert,
then in every case, there's
sorry,
always those one or two things where it's like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that this was going on.
Robert, in this instance with this organization, what were the main comments that had been reflected in those bottom scores of innovation, well-being, and I can't remember the third one. What was in the
Yeah, that's a great question. So we engage in these conversations. We do anonymous conversations, listening, deep dives, right? And then our strategic advisors sit down after we gather all of this data, and then they correlate and pull this out. And this is, I pulled the slide, one of the slides, and I covered up a couple things to hide the organization here. But in this specific one, it came back with very clear that there were three things: the attendance policy, a cancellation policy, and a PTO policy that their people viewed as punitive and contradicted their overall well-being. Now, this organization is struggling with 90+% on their front lines, people providing those in-home services, 90+% turnover. So this is a huge issue and a problem. And what we would help them to identify that there were three very specific policies that were driving this and making their employees just feel like objects. And you can see here, like I pulled a couple real quickly just to show you. But hey, I work 31 hours a week. I'm permitted to miss less than one day without using PTO or getting written up. I don't feel like we value the employees or our well-being, my mental well-being. It punishes us if we take time off, all these things, right? And we just got an onslaught of this feedback about, hey, we love what we do, but we don't feel like you guys care about us. And these things are really difficult for us. And that's why we're leaving. So we were able to help and pinpoint. So thanks for that question, because that's exactly what we do. We help to pinpoint through these conversations exactly where to focus your time and resources.
Yeah, it would make sense that if like their workforce is 90% frontline, and especially during what's happened over the course of the last 2 years, that they're burnt out, and this would make sense. But I guess that people within the HR and leaders in the organization really just needed to see what people were saying and understand that through the data and they made changes, correct?
Yes. So then what we did with this organization is, again, our strategic advisor sat down and went through all of this. And then after the initial assessment, they said, hey, how do you help us from here? And that's where in the platform, we can continue to turn on tactical campaigns and deep dives and do these very strategic pinpoint actions now to help them through what we call the illumination cycle, which is essentially just the feedback loop. We want to now close the loop, take the feedback, gather insight, prepare actions, and then take actions and then measure the progress, right? We call it LEAP: listen, engage, take action, and measure your progress. And that little cycle we now start running through, and we start addressing each of these issues. And that's where we're helping the organization move forward. So we do provide additional services other than just the HX assessment. But the reason why I want to focus on the assessment today is because what I've seen is that in HR, it can be difficult for you to go out and to get the budgets for some of these different things. So I'm going to show you today how I'm pretty much just about going to give this to you today because of that, because I don't want to have you go get budget approval or all these different things, because what I've seen is that, frankly, the language of business is numbers. And as soon as we start showing the numbers to the executive team and leadership, That's the language that they understand. And
Mhm.
then what happens is instead of us trying to say, hey, we want to deploy this new thing and start really listening and actively, well, as soon as we show them the data, if we take a data first strategy and show and pinpoint what we need to do, then it's them driving us to say, okay, now how do we get that done? So what I've learned going through this process, and those of you that are on here from HR and people leaders, you get this, right? You know that you struggle with that with your different leaderships in the organization. And by taking this data first approach, they'll be asking you, how do we now get these things done? Because it's always a struggle is, hey, I think we should be doing these things. Well, without the data to back it up, frankly, they just don't hear you.
Mhm.
And once we can present this data like this changes the game.
I think that HR is 100% more data driven than they were even just 2 years ago, and this data. It's what's difficult is that it's not the problem. Isn't that HR isn't data driven, because we are a data driven. The problem is the how to analyze and get the data on things that are extremely difficult to track, which is well-being. We've said hands down a lot of the times that it's been difficult to track the ROI on well-being. It's been difficult to track well-being within the organization. So you're now giving HR and people leaders data to support what they know and what they see in order to take it back up the chain.
That's right, because most of the data, unfortunately, that HR has accessible to them today is, what's happened, right? Here's our turnover rates. Here's our churn rates. Here's this, here's that. Here's all these different things, but it's all what's happened. It's not what's happening. And how do we get ahead of that? And that's why this data is so critical, because I call it live human sentiment analytics. Because what we're able to do is measure on a live, active basis what's really happening. So that when we get to the turn rates, these are the predictive indicators of those churn rates. We can predict what those are going to be based on our data, because we're the front end, we're the predictive side of those ultimate outcomes. And that's what we're helping HR to now get is, well, how do we drive those outcomes instead of just reporting on them? How do we drive those? Well, now we can give you the predictive indicators to help do that. And this assessment, again, is the simple and easiest way and the path forward to help you and your organization to get started. Mm-hmm. What we did is we tried to make it as easy as possible. All I need is a little simple CSV with the different demographic data and information regarding your people. Then we created a video because as we deploy it, it's critical to prepare the organization for the assessment. And so we created a video for you to share with your leadership that helps them understand and clarify their role in being our change champions and encouraging their people to participate. So there's a video prepared, you share with them, teaches and trains them exactly what they need to know and how they need to then work with their teams. And then we give them a video, a short few-minute video to share with their teams that then teach the rest of the organization, hey, your organization cares about you enough that they really want to actively listen and learn from your experience. This isn't going to be a traditional survey. This is going to be an interactive engagement where you have the opportunity to help share anonymously with a third party. This is the other key thing, because everybody's worried about sharing openly and is this truly anonymous? And so those are the biggest concerns that we have to overcome. So we address all of those things in the video. We help your leadership to reinforce those things. And then now that they're ready and prepared, then we immediately launch. And when we launch via text, especially, and again, we can launch via email if necessary, but when we go via text, we get such fast responses that literally within 72 hours, the data's back. I typically run it for a week just to make sure that we get everything. And about midweek, we also send a follow-up text saying, hey, we're hearing great comments and things like this and great opportunities to improve like this. If you haven't taken the opportunity, log in and share. And then by the end of that week, Then our teams dive into all the data and the assessment. And the following week, we literally sit down with you and walk you through and pinpoint for you exactly where to focus your efforts, where your strengths are, where do you need, because I fully believe that you sell to the organization through the eyes of the love group. The people that love you, we want to do more of those things. And yes, then we correct the issues and the problems at the same time, but we help you understand what those are and deliver this powerful assessment. And again, what I mentioned is that I want to give it to you in the most cost-effective way. Frankly, I lose money on this. This is a loss leader. Having our teams fully engage in all these conversations. That organization I mentioned, we had over 900 conversations with their people, listening and diving deep to gather amazing insight for them. And that's where I wanted to share with you. My offer today is for organizations with 500 employees up to 5,000. And if you're larger than that, just reach out to me, and, same type of pricing, but just very, very low cost, because I didn't want you to have to go fight a fight or have some big battle or some huge approval. This is a no-brainer. This is the no-brainer that you walk in and say, okay, hey, we need to run this assessment because it's going to help me pinpoint exactly where, and it's only $1,000 or $1,500, whatever the size of your organization. So we wanted to take that off the table, because again, what we've seen is that once we get in the door and show that to the organization and deliver this insight, then they're going to be asking you, saying, hey, now what do we do about this, and how can they help us to drive this forward? And that's what we're really here. We're not just a tool. We're here to help and support you to grow and drive your organizations in a tactical, data-driven way to very specific business outcomes. And that's part of what we sit down and work with you to do, is identify the exact outcomes that you're looking for, and then think of us as your coach and your guide to help you to achieve that as a third-party resource. And that's part of what we do. And so that's what I wanted to really share. I'm happy to answer any questions. We can stop sharing now. And, but I just, hopefully you get a sense of my passion. I love what we do. It's an amazing opportunity for us to share with you and your organizations and help your organizations to grow and the people within those. I love seeing the successes. But frankly, what we see is over time, I have organizations that within 1 year, they have active participation rates of 90+% of their organization are actively engaged. Because what we did is we turned this tool into the ultimate listening and communication platform, where their people are offering ideas and suggestions and collaborating and driving the organization forward. Now, I wish I could tell you I could flip that switch and overnight you get there, but it takes work and it takes dedication working on this together. But that's what we can help you to achieve. So, sorry, I get too excited.
I can feel your I can feel your passion. I can see your passion. Thank you so much for that great offer to our Progressive HR Live network. I greatly appreciate that, and thank you as well, for sponsoring this live and giving us a presentation and a demonstration of what your technology does. And going back to that question that we said at the beginning, what is the difference between human experience technology and employee experience technology? Is that, we're really looking at an innovation. Human experience technology is an innovation in how we have conversations with our people and how we give our people a voice and how we move towards democratizing decision-making within our organization. And to your point, when we were talking about surveys, this is not, Olumo is not a twice a year, large, expansive survey that you could be, getting information on things that could have passed a few days ago. And it's not an everyday, excuse me, little frog in my throat. It's not an everyday pulse survey that only kind of scratches the surface. This is a deep dive with analytics and responsiveness to the people regarding their whole experience within the organization. So thank you for that, Robert. So in a recent LinkedIn post, you asked the audience or your network, who is the owner of employee engagement with an organization and why? What was the result of that poll? Were you surprised at the majority answer, and what comments stood out to you?
I wasn't really surprised because the majority of things came back as really everyone. And I absolutely understand and agree with that perspective. Um, because everyone plays their own role within engagement, right? The leaders have a role, the executive leadership has a role, and the CEO has a role. What I found, however, though, is that in organizations that don't have the highest level of support and drive of those initiatives, like if the CEO is disengaged from the engagement process within your organization, it's going to be a struggle. And what I wanted to highlight in that was that, you know, absolutely everybody has a role and everybody needs to play that role, and that role has to be aligned. But what I was trying to also share is that with executives specifically, is that if you don't place the priority on that and give your HR and people leaders the resources that they need to achieve it and the support, then what I've seen is it's an uphill battle, frankly. And so that's why what I was trying to do is encourage and help executives recognize and take ownership of, the chief experience officer. That CEO really needs to be that chief experience officer. And they really need to focus on driving and empowering their people. But it also has to come from them because the organization has to see that this is a priority, and those priorities are set from the highest levels of the organization. So that's what I wanted to share in that. And yeah, we had great comments and great participation in that overall survey that I sent out on LinkedIn.
So, agreed. Um, so, before we end here, I wanted to ask you, what type of companies do you work with?
Yeah, so I love that question because we're not specific to any unique demographic necessarily. What I say to our organization is, look, we're really looking to work with organizations that are people companies. And what I mean by that is that they're organizations that we don't necessarily have to try to convince that people are their greatest asset and that they value their people, and have to try to convince them to dedicate resources, both financially, time and money resources, to growing their organization through their people. Yes, we can help companies do that, but frankly, we want to work with the companies that already believe that, and that just need the tools and the ability to engage in that way. I love it when we're able to meet, and we meet with the CEO and the HR and people leaders in the same room to get everybody on the same page and focused working together. When we can do that, we are so successful, and those organizations are so successful. And it's amazing to me, you see the leaders of the largest organizations in the world, that's all they do. They focus on their teams and their people, and that experience, because they've recognized and learned that that's the case. Where some of the small to medium sized companies, some of the smaller executives just haven't really got that vision yet. So we really look for two things. One is people companies that are focused and have a strong belief in their people. And then the second is that we tend to work best with organizations with at least 100 employees. Frankly, almost the larger, the better. But we've just found organizations that are smaller than that. We have companies using our platform that are smaller than that, in the 50, 60 employee range, and they love it and they use it all the time because they're growing their organizations right out of the get-go with a strong listening ear. And they've just found that these anonymous conversations deliver insights that they could have never gotten any other way. But what we really find is, as organizations grow and it becomes more difficult, more sites, more locations, people are working now from home. Well, how do we really know what's going on? And I can't wait to get something once a year, every 6 months, once a quarter, even. I need live, active listening and conversations happening to help me as a HR and people leader and as a CEO of an organization, to drive my organization forward. I don't want to figure out later after, it becomes a fire. I want to stamp out sparks. And that's what we allow organizations to do. So we're a really good fit, but we work across all kinds of different demographics, everywhere from construction companies to software companies. There's I don't have time to tell you a story, but an amazing construction company that is so focused on using listening to drive their organization, where construction companies right now are just dying for resources and staff. They have people flooding in their doors because of the experience, that human experience that they've created is nowhere to be found in the construction company. One where they feel valued and listened to and heard in construction. And that's why they're just getting flooded with people. They have no problem hiring people because they've created an amazing workplace where people are driving now to them. They didn't do it overnight, but they did it through consistent actions. And that's what we help them to do. So anyways, it's great stories and great opportunities, but I really appreciate and thank you for the opportunity to come on today and share this experience. And hopefully, this is just a powerful tool and would love to help you and your organization. And this is a great way to just get started and let us prove it to you. Let us just show you what we can do and how we can help.
% agree. That Marcel, thank you for bringing that up, because that I have a question then for Robert. Like, how often do you suggest using the Olumo HR tech? How often do you suggest using the Olumo human experience tech approach? Obviously, more than once a year.
Yeah. So depending on the organization and what they're able to achieve. So for example, like this organization, we worked with about 1,800 employees, the one I shared today, about 1,800 employees. They have some pretty good resources in HR and support, and they're able to attack a couple of these areas at a time. So we essentially went through the process of, okay, now we know where to focus. Here's the things that we're learning. What do we have? Time, resources, all the different things, and figured out exactly where to go. Then what we did is we used the platform. When I say active listening, we typically engage about on a weekly basis. And what we started to do after the initial, so we run that initial assessment, pinpoint where to go, and then we turn on these tactical deep dive campaigns. So we have a well-being campaign that we now activated for them that starts asking very deep questions to have deeper conversations around that well-being so that we can verify and make sure that we're going to take the right actions to get those ultimate outcomes. Then we take them through an action cycle. Then we measure the progress of that, and we complete the cycle. Once they complete the cycle, and then they've had time, because usually I look at it about 6-month cycles, because it typically takes about that long to go through, get the actions, take the actions, measure progress, but then also have time to see meaningful change. And so we, in most cases, look at about another 6 months, then we run the full assessment again to see how we move the needle. Because, we benchmarked ourselves, and I didn't mention, but there are benchmarks against other organizations in here as well. But now we're able to see the needle. So we take a very pragmatic, tactical approach to listening, engaging, taking action, measuring progress. Then we run the cycle again. Then we run the cycle again, right? It's an iterative process, consistent. So what's happening is, bottom line, we're actively listening all of the time and engaging in conversations about different aspects of the organization. There's even like live polls. Like for example, they did an all hands meeting. And right after the all hands meeting, they sent out an interactive live poll. What I mean by a live poll is, again, we're going to interact. And we shared and said, hey, what were your thoughts surrounding the overall experience that you had in the all hands meeting? And we started engaging in all these conversations. And what they learned was, well, hey, we need to be doing this. Nobody cares about this, so let's stop doing that. And well, this is what they really need to get out of that meeting to make it feel valuable. So we started just engaging in all of these. I share with people all the time, there's no need to, don't guess, just ask. So we start deploying the platform to provide announcements, just one-way communication about new things that are going on. Because that's one of the biggest frustrations people always have is, well, I don't feel communicated with. Well, that's because your organization tries to communicate with you via email. And frankly, everybody reads these. And
That's good.
so we just start sharing communication strategies and live polls and tactical campaigns. And that's where our strategic advisors are engaged, working, helping drive all of this to get these results. But bottom line, we're running the assessment a few times a year, yes, the overall assessment, but we're actively listening every single day. And that's the power. That's the difference of this than an annual, because I had my brother-in-law over the holidays came in and he's like, oh yeah, I can't even get my
Can I
people to
interrupt
fill
you
out.
for a minute? We had a
Oh, please.
question.
Sorry.
I've been waiting. So I wanted to go back to Marcel, and he said it was meant for as a question. So should we do both? So his question was, should they do both a large engagement survey once a year and the Olumo HX Tech surveys? So summarizing what you're saying is that
Well, so for most organizations that we work with, they replace their annual assessments with the engagement survey. If there is a need for other components of that, we just seen that this is a much more tactical, faster approach that leads to immediate action, and that the traditional annuals, while better than nothing, but I say better than nothing. I want to be really honest with you, is that annual surveys for most organizations don't often lead to meaningful, visible change within an organization. And so if you're taking one, you deliver, you take all this time and effort, sit it in front of the executive team, they look at it, make a few comments, and then nothing happens. Unfortunately, that's what I hear a lot. And I'm not saying that this is happening in his organization at all, but I'm just saying what the feedback I get is that happens a lot. And that's why I call them the disengagement surveys, because they they make people feel like, hey, we're going to make changes, and then you don't. So the biggest thing in all of this is not actually about taking the assessment, it's about action. And if that assessment that you're doing is driving to action, then that's awesome. You guys are doing an amazing job. But that's what I've seen the difference here, is that with us being actively involved and engaged, it's about driving actions faster, visible actions, connecting feedback to action. Once we do that, we can create a momentum within the organization that's almost unstoppable. But you have to do that. And that's what we share with organizations is you have to connect feedback to action fast. In fact, one of the first things we do, we look for the easiest thing on the planet to do. I don't care if it's different snacks in the break room or whatever it is, but we just find something that we can address immediately. And within 30 days, we're looking for one action item that we can take and execute in less than 30 days. And then celebrate that like crazy, that feedback came, we took action on it, we're listening. All they need is a demonstration that that's happening. So again, most people, once we get involved, tend to replace this as their annual survey, because now we're actively engaging and driving consistent action through this multiple times per year, and then live engagements. But that's what I've seen the majority of clients that we're working with do.
And I think it's important to hit on the point that you were talking about the text, is that our workforce is like, what is it, 90%? We're talking about how 90% of our workforce, or a huge portion of our workforce globally, is frontline workers, and they don't traditionally have access to email. And so I think that I think it was Anita Ledick that said that the use of text or mobile application has risen from 54% to 74%. And
Yeah.
that if you don't make an app or you don't make a survey that is usable for your mobile phone, that you're basically losing the voice of billions and billions of people. So, really that the frontline worker voice and the apps that work with them are really on the rise right now.
Yeah, I was working with a company yesterday that they build trusses for residential homes, and they have about 800 employees, but the majority of them aren't office workers, and they don't even have email addresses, and I've worked with other like grocery stores where tons of their people don't have actual corporate emails and all of this different types of things. And so this is just fantastic way. Text is so effective and so quick and easy, and people just prefer it. And some companies are like, "Oh, I'm not sure our people will want to participate," but man, that's not what we see. That's the method of choice. They want it quick, easy, and simple also. And when we can just chat back and forth with them via text, that it's just a gold mine, like I said, of insight and understanding that we can gather. So
Yeah, and also with your phones, you can record voice too. So, you don't just have to, like, you just hit that record button, and it autofills with the text. I mean, that's the easiest. I'm
yeah.
thinking, because a lot of people don't sit there and text a lot. A lot of people just using their voice. So with that, we're wrapping up now. So I wanted everyone to let you know that you can follow me, Coreyne Woodman-Holoubek, and Progressive HR Live on LinkedIn. And be sure, if you're interested, be sure to hit the subscribe button on my profile. That's now the bell. So it's a subscribe bell in order to get notified of many more Progressive HR Lives coming down the pipeline, as well as content on HR tech, work tech, Web 3.0, and the creator economy. So next week, in 2 weeks, we have Vijay Navaluri, who's the CEO of TechForce AI, on, and we'll be talking about digital enablement, citizen developers, and supporting a hybrid workforce. And that is the same time, 11 a.m. CST, 12 p.m. EST. In 2 weeks, that would be March 1st, so the 1st of March. And so again, thank you, Robert, for coming on and sponsoring this live and presenting on Olumo, a human experience technology. Greatly appreciate you sharing all that and giving that offer to our network. Thank you. We have one comment that just came in. Jenny said that she enjoyed this talk. Oh, thank you, Jenny. Appreciate that. Anything really quickly before we say goodbye that you want to say to the audience, Robert?
I just wanted to let them know that they can also reach out directly to me. Just my email is robert@olumo.com. So super simple. But yeah, if you'd like to have a conversation, learn a little bit more, and look at the potential of rolling this out for your organization, it's quick, it's simple, and really powerful. So you can reach me at robert@olumo.com.
And Olumo is a bit customizable, correct?
Yeah. So we tried to make it really simple and easy with these assessments, like the human experience assessment. We also have another direct leader assessment that a lot of organizations just love, because the direct leader is the number one relationship, the key relationship in any organization to retaining people. And so many organizations don't know. It's interesting because yet everybody knows that that's true, but yet most don't know where they have good and bad leaders and where those leaders have their strengths and their weaknesses. So we have another assessment that's our direct leader assessment that measures 15 specific behaviors of a leader that then we can help pinpoint strengths and weaknesses. Again, not so you go fire your bad leaders, but so that you know exactly where to help them to grow and to learn and develop their skill set as a leader. It's interesting because I've seen that in many cases, people don't recognize those things. And that's with the help of this assessment. It's a third party tool to help you then work with these people to help them grow and expand and learn. So there's all of that. Plus you can create your own metrics, customize everything. So yeah, it's a tool to help you engage and create listening that delivers understanding within your organization.
Thanks, Robert. Appreciate that. Progressive HR Live Network, thank you so much, Resourceful Humans, for joining us today. Greatly appreciate it. Robert, thanks again for sponsoring. Appreciate you taking the time out to talk with us today. And everyone, have a very wonderful and productive Tuesday. Thank you.